We would like to be respectful of everybody's time, so we're going to get started here. So welcome everybody. My name is Molly Simons. I am the Marketing and Program Development Fellow here at the Cold Climate Housing Research Center, or CCHRC. Thank you so much for joining us today for the third class in our spring class series called Catch It Early: Common Home Issues and How to Fix Them. We have one more class in this series. It's about energy efficiency upgrades, and it is next Tuesday, May 13th. If you want to learn more, you can head over to our website at cchrc.org, or we're going to put the link in the chat. And all of these classes are generously sponsored by the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation and the Golden Valley Electric Association. We will have a question and answer section after the presentation. So if you have a question, you can feel free to put it in the chat as we go or save it, and we will get to questions at the end. Our instructor today is Brannon Richart. Brannon is the owner and general contractor of Intella Homes. Born and raised in Fairbanks, Brannon became a manager for a local weatherization agency, which gave him the opportunity to study thousands of already existing homes. After years of working and seeing subpar construction, Brannon decided that there had to be a better way to build and founded his company, Intella Homes. In 2015, Brannon and Intella Homes earned the highest achievement awarded to a builder in the state of Alaska by the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation for building the most efficient house in the state of Alaska. Brannon has also taught many classes for CCHRC, including our incredibly successful owner-builder class. We're so excited to have Brannon here with us, and we can't wait to learn from him. So thank you so much for being with us.
Wow, thanks, Molly. That felt like the whole Tiger Woods stepping up to the tee box thing. That was quite the introduction. I just thought it was going to be Brandon from Intella Homes, so I appreciate that. Thanks, Molly. So as Molly said, I'm a general contractor in the Fairbanks area, born and raised here. I've been building houses for just at about 20 years now. Um, and I have a heavy background in building science and weatherization too. So I just want to share a little bit about my experience in the home building industry between new builds, also older homes, and certain things to look for in Fairbanks homes. One thing I like to joke around about Fairbanks is if I had to pick before I started building the worst place in the United States to pick to build homes, you couldn't pick a better spot than Fairbanks, Alaska for that. So our houses face a lot of really unique challenges between the weather, the freezing, the thawing. So while there's good advice that can be taken for any house, Fairbanks definitely has its own unique aspects. So I'm gonna hop in here real quick. So who am I? Just so you guys know a little more, even though Molly did a great job of explaining the gist of who I am. So local, mostly custom builder, typically do custom homes, have done some spec homes, some multifamilies, but typically custom homes. I'm the current president of the Interior Alaska Builders Association. So they're actually currently having their board meeting. I didn't realize what the sixth was 3 months ago when I obligated myself to this. So I made sure I could be here for all of you guys. So my vice president, Jason Fales, is doing great in there. I'm also on the Alaska State Home Building Board and currently the secretary for that board, as well as our National Association of Home Builders delegate from the Fairbanks area. So for the national issues and policies for the Association of Home Builders, I'm the lucky guy that gets to represent Fairbanks and vote for us on Fairbanks' behalf. So as Molly mentioned, I also have extensive backgrounds in weatherization. So I worked for interior weatherization for roughly, I want to say about 5 years when funding for those programs was extremely heavy. So I was really lucky to get to be there when we were doing 500 homes a year, which was a lot of research that we were doing basically. So other than helping people, it was a great opportunity to do research on housing. So it was really fun to be a part of that. Also energy efficiency. A big part of my custom home building is energy efficient homes. And also I dabble a little bit, as Molly mentioned, in education and do a class here and there, which I never thought I would do, but here we are. So it's fun time. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Uh, Water. So we don't want our house to look like the one in the bottom there, obviously. And any house that goes unmaintained will get to that point somewhere in its life. So as a builder, the biggest thing that I always worry about, and this isn't just a Fairbanks thing, this is pretty much everywhere, is water. And there's a lot of different types of water that can be involved in deteriorating a home. So we're going to cover that pretty extensively in this because honestly, that's my biggest threat to a home. We'll talk about a little bit of minor maintenance issues, just some odds and ends, loose screw on a window handle, stuff like that. Home settling issues. So that's going to be a big one in the Fairbanks area, especially. So pretty much everyone here knows we have a lot of permafrost issues in the area. Not only that, but improper foundations and stuff like that. So while home settling is pretty typical, almost in any new home or home in the area to some level, there's definitely a need for concern at some point. So there's typical settling, and then there's structural failure. Uh, Big thing we'll talk about too, when to call for help. A lot of things a homeowner is capable of doing themselves. So there's some stuff that is worth, checking out YouTube and doing. But then other times, there's reasons why there are professionals that do certain things. They own tools, they have equipment that the typical homeowner isn't going to have access to. So sometimes it's just worth calling in a contractor because of my background in energy. Talk about a little bit too, because I also kind of find that as home maintenance is maintaining your energy bills. So just some big hit items that you can look at when you're trying to reduce or at least understand where your energy is going. And then I'll just give some final tips and takeaways here at the end as we finish up. Okay, so why this cute plant loves water, but your home absolutely hates it. So everyone knows their home is mostly made out of wood. And one thing I'm going to talk about now is our wood that we use to build homes is actually much more easy to deteriorate than what was used 100 years ago in its typical wood home. So the wood is different. We use a lot of composite materials such as OSB plywoods. Our floor joists, our TGIs have that same OSB material. And for those of you who aren't familiar with that product, it basically looks like a bunch of wood chips that are pressed together. So if you wanted to go to a lab and make the most ideal mold food, that's probably what they would make it out of. So it's an unfortunate thing, but that's going to make water main of one of our main enemies in a home. Okay. So, one thing I kind of like to point out is if water can make something as big as the Grand Canyon, just think of what it can do to your poor little house. So water is going to enter your house in a lot of different forms. So, it can be seen in condensation on windows and around doors, stuff like that. Groundwater. So Fairbanks, depending on the area you live in, groundwater may or may not be an issue. The higher you get in the hills, obviously, the higher away from the water table you get. But everything down in the valley, North Pole area, typically you can dig down anywhere between 6 and 15 feet and you're in the water table. So that's a lot of moisture that can come up into a house. So a ground vapor barrier is going to be very important. The higher water table is, but also in the hills, you're going to want a ground vapor barrier because there's quite a bit of moisture that can still come through the ground and radon the more that you get into the hills. So I'll touch on radon briefly in this. I feel like that's a pretty big subject, so we're not going to touch on it too much, but that's going to be a big issue the more you get into the hills and into the schisty rock areas. Uh, Hoarfrost. So if anyone's lived in Fairbanks for a while, they've probably seen instances of hoarfrost. That's going to be found in the attics, especially in the Fairbanks area. A lot of times you can see it coming out of the gable end vents of homes uh, in the coldest months of the winter, and it's where moisture is escaping from the house. So houses don't make moisture; people make moisture. So anytime you see frost coming out of a house, that's from the occupants, and that's something that has to be controlled. Bulk moisture. So we're going to talk about rain infiltrating a house or possibly ice damming on a roof. Plumbing leaks are going to be pretty obvious ones typically. Indoor humidity, which has to go with condensation. So my years at interior weatherization, that was probably the biggest thing we fought was indoor humidity because as we try to tighten houses, what I like to tell people, and this is a pretty graphic example is how we teach us builders to build houses now is basically to take a trash bag and put it around your head and pull it as tight as you can. And that's how we want our houses built. But then we give you a straw, being your HRV, your bath fans, and it is fine as long as you have that straw to breathe out of. But if you stop using that straw, the consequences are much different than a home built in the 70s, 80s, so forth. So, indoor humidity is a big thing for me because it's the main contributor to the big one on the bottom, which I know is a huge concern to people, mold. So we'll touch on mold here a bit too. Mold is always a one issue problem, and it's moisture. So, like I said, there's a whole list of different types of moisture. So we'll kind of cover different ways you can protect yourself from them and what you want to watch for. So this is a big one I see every winter. People always tell me, or not me, but I see it on Facebook, on the Fairbanks page, and when I worked at interior weatherization, we'd have people say, "Oh, I have bad windows. I get ice in my windows in the wintertime, and there's a lot of condensation there." Typically, and it's not always true that it's not the window. Sometimes, yes, you may have a single pane window or very poorly sealed window, but I'd say in my experience, after thousands of homes, probably at least 95% of the time, the issue is actually indoor air humidity. So the humidity is too high. We in the wintertime, we like to shut all our doors, we shut all our windows, and we live in very tight bubbles. So if we're not running our bath fans in modern homes, our HRV systems, then you're going to have that. And sometimes, if ventilation's inadequate, you may have to supplement it with things such as the dryer. Or sorry, the dryer does work, but the range hood is a good option if you cannot get rid of the moisture in your windows. But the bigger solution would actually be to fix your typical ventilation. So whether it's your bath fans or so forth, they should be able to remove moisture in the home to a sufficient level to where, except when it's 50 below, it's really hard to avoid a tiny, tiny bit of condensation on a window at 50 below. You have 50 below on one side of a 1 inch pane of glass and 70 degrees super humid air on the inside. So that's an unfortunate side effect of living in Fairbanks, Alaska, but you shouldn't have massive air buildup or sorry, ice buildup. And as a lot of people know too, it's a pretty common thing to make sure you don't have anything in front of your windows, keep your curtains up in the wintertime. And that's so warm air can get to the pane. So again, you're warming up that surface so you don't have as many moisture problems. The big thing that'll lead to, and you can see a small example in the picture on the bottom there, some sheetrock damage around the window. It's probably from letting condensation occur, not drying it. I see this all the time, especially in newer homes that are really tight. So the big thing is run the ventilation when you see that, whatever it may be. If your ventilation running at full power isn't enough to alleviate that issue, like I said, there is a small chance that you do have a poorly sealed window, or typically a double pane window isn't the main culprit of that. Single pane is a bad window, but usually it's just run your ventilation a little bit more. Okay, so groundwater and bulk water, kind of both forms of bulk water intrusion. So the biggest thing on the groundwater is really going to be at North Pole, and this is really a home building thing. There's flood levels that you have to stay out of, but really the only home maintenance thing you can do is your ground vapor barrier. So a lot of people don't spend time in their crawl spaces or their attics, and that's where a lot of the guts and the high functioning parts of their home are. The ground is a huge source of moisture. So if you are on a crawl space situation where you can get down and see the ground, it's always good to make sure that you have a plastic vapor barrier that's sealed over the top of it to prevent bulk moisture. Because again, the first product that moisture is going to get to is the underside of the plywood and the floor joists. Which, like I just mentioned, if you could make an ideal mold food, either that or the back of sheetrock would probably be the best food for mold if they had it in a laboratory situation. So a lot of times in the summer, building new houses, just kind of a little story. It's really hard to fight some of the mold because we'll be building a house in the rain. And if you put the vapor barrier down, you could catch the rain and water down there, while at the same time you want to cover the ground as fast as possible so they're not having a bunch of ground moisture. So it's kind of a fun thing that builders have to fight here. But long term, as long as you get it dry down there with a permanent vapor barrier, any mold that does occur, luckily, is pretty easily taken care of unless you don't take care of it in a timely manner. Um, because again, mold is a moisture problem. And if you get rid of the moisture, you kill the mold and then you can treat it and take care of it from there. But until you take care of the moisture, it will never go away. Rainwater. So luckily in Fairbanks, we're not Seattle, we're not Portland. So as far as rain goes, we don't have the biggest issues. But the biggest things I would probably say for rainwater is gutters are really important, and that's going to deal with water around your foundations. I don't know if I have a slide for this later, and it kind of has to do with settlement, but I can say, like my parents' house, I grew up on Petey Road, and the backfill around the house is it's not great. It's an older house, and gravel wasn't used around it. It's a really silty, dirty material. So in the wintertime, when that material freezes, it expands pretty heavily. So ideally, you would have gravel or rock around your foundations, and more importantly, keep the water away. Uh, the rainwater and snow melt. So anyway, their house is on a wood foundation, and because of the ground movement, it's actually pushed in the walls on the foundation quite a bit. So they're going to have to do some repairs, and it's something that's gone over the years, and I've kind of monitored with them. And I didn't build it; it's the house I grew up in, so I moved there when I was in kindergarten, so I can't be blamed for the house. But it's just an example of an importance of getting the groundwater away, the rainwater in particular, so you don't have such moist soils around the foundation. Um, and then snow melt. And this one I would think would be a no-brainer for most people, but try not to stack piles of snow up against your house. Houses, I like to tell people, they're water resistant, they're not waterproof, they're not boats. So even in the springtime, if you can move, a 4 foot path of snow away from your house, it really helps for the longevity of the foundation. Um, there's a picture on there as well of ice dams in the bottom corner there. If you've lived in Fairbanks, you've probably seen those quite a bit. The picture in the middle, it's kind of hard to tell what that is, but that's the main cause of those. So if you see those ice dams, and those can cause a lot of water damage on roofs by ice backing up underneath the shingles and metal and underlayment, whatever kind of roof you have. But the baffles are typically a piece of cardboard that if you can see where the red line is with the little thing baffles pointing to it, typically that would hold your insulation down approximately an inch and a half to 2 inches away from the plywood on the roof. That way there's airflow going over the top and allowing your attic to breathe. So what you would see the picture in the bottom left there, typically that insulation is pressed right to the roof deck. And there can be a couple other causes of ice dams, but typically in pictures like the one you're seeing, that would be a pretty typical cause. So this is something I'm going to talk a little bit about the end of going up in your attics and crawl spaces. So they're not the fun maintenance, but they're the really important maintenance. And again, I'll reflect on my time back at the weatherization company quite a bit. That was where we spent our time, was in um, attics and crawl spaces. And actually, going back to the last slide, a lot of people didn't really understand why we spent so much time putting in bath fans. Every home we did, I think we were about the biggest purchaser of Panasonic bath fans in the country at the time. It was really cool because they'd send their engineers over to talk to us about how the bath fans were working. And Panasonic makes a great bath fan, hands down. I'll say probably. Um, but that education piece of making people understand while we tighten your house, we also need to supply ventilation. It goes hand in hand. You can't tighten a house to make it more energy efficient and not also address the ventilation needs. So other fixes for these bulk water issues, so proper drainage, gutters, good attic insulation. So another reason for those ice dams could just be lack of insulation altogether, just basically melting the snow right off the roof, and keep snow piles away from the home the best you can. Okay, so this is a picture. Not sure how many of the participants have ever had the pleasure of spending time in an attic in Fairbanks in the wintertime, but should you get to enjoy that experience, This is pretty typical, honestly. You don't want to see a bunch of it, and it's obviously best to see none of it. And I'm not going to say half the houses have it or a quarter. I will just say it's pretty common when to go into an attic and at least in one area or another, see a little bit of hoarfrost, especially in the really cold weather. So it's also a good time to go up there and see where your air leakage and stuff like that would be. So that's going to be caused by air leakage somewhere. So, like I said, houses don't make moisture, people make moisture. Um, so somewhere you do have an air leak, and all houses have air leaks. Uh, Typically on an energy rating, the tighter the home, the better. But there is no perfectly tight home; it doesn't exist. They all uh, leak air to some degree. It's tested with a blower door. So if anyone's ever been around an energy rater or had that process done, they're probably familiar with seeing the blower door, which is going to test the air tightness. So you can still have problems like this, even if your house is fairly tight, if there's uncontrolled moisture in the house. It's extremely moist, and it's not being ventilated through the means of bath fans, HRVs, range hoods, etc. Uh, you can have these problems still occur in a fairly tight home. So while it's important to have, again, I'll preach this all day long, you need to have a really fine balance of your air tightness and your ventilation both working together. So this will cause an issue that some people may see called spring rain. Again, I'm not going to say it's in 50% or 25% of the houses, but it was a fairly common issue in Fairbanks houses that we found quite a bit. A lot of times in the springtime, people will feel that they have a roof leak. Again, on the Facebook page, I see it all the time. Uh, Typically around this time of year, when the first few snow melts happen, people will start looking for roofers on there and say, hey, my roof's leaking. And if you ask them, does it just leak in the spring or does it leak in the summer when it's raining too? A lot of times you'll get the answer of no, typically the spring is the worst time it's leaking. And what that indicates is it's not a roof leak at all. It's spring rain. So you have an air sealing issue typically. Um, that needs to be fixed. So the only way to do that is go up in your attic. And again, the wintertime, when it looks like that up there, is always going to be the best time to get up there and take a look because it really shows itself. It's hard to see in the summertime. One thing you will see up there in the summertime, if you get to looking around for signs and symptoms of that kind of thing, would be you see watermarks on the lumber typically. You could see staining on the insulation. Sometimes insulation may be kind of packed down from moisture falling down on it. A lot of times the sheets of ice on the plywood decking that you're seeing there can actually get heavy enough where they'll fall. They can compress the insulation a little bit. So again, typically fixed with air sealing and controlling your indoor air humidity with ventilation can lead to bulk moisture issues. So if this was to happen year after year after year after year with no remedy, at some point you could lead to some rot. The one nice thing about this being just a spring issue is typically in a well ventilated attic, it is going to dry itself out. So luckily, it's not happening every year, but it's still definitely something you wouldn't want happening for decades on end. So typically presents as a roof leak, but as I mentioned, is not. It's not coming through your roof, and it's just coming through your ceiling. All right, the funnest one. Everyone loves mold. Okay, so mold, again, ran into mold a lot with interior weatherization, run into a lot with new builds. Mold does happen. It is an unfortunate thing in house. I've had houses that have had mold occur in crawl spaces. A new house had to have people come out to test them to make sure they're safe. And the one thing I can say, in my experience, is mold, as mentioned once, is always a moisture issue. So before everyone always asks, should I put scrub it with bleach. There's other products at Home Depot called Microbium. Other stores sell different products. There's multiple products that will advertise as mold killing or mold disabling. There's several claims, but the big thing for any of that is you really have to dry it out. So whether it's in the crawl space, the attic, in a bedroom, such as this kind of gross picture that's in this one of the walls just covered in mold. Um, before you cover it up, before you try to do anything with it or treat it, the biggest step is always going to be get rid of the moisture. So there are different ventilation options that can run off of humidity sensing controllers if you don't know how much humidity you should have. Um, Typically in a Fairbanks house, and this is really dry. The unfortunate part is what's good for a house is the exact opposite of what's good for a human. And that's just the sad facts of it. So the human body in a house in Fairbanks is typically going to be pretty dry to keep the house healthy. So different numbers, everyone's kind of got their own numbers. Below 30 is what I'd like to see. Mid 20s is even better. But if you're getting to high 30s, 40%, you're going to start running into mold and other issues potentially, especially on cold surfaces. So, said get rid of the moisture, lots of ventilation options to do that. And then in the smaller writing there, another thing, if you don't get rid of the moisture, so mold's typically more on the surface, usually removable. After a while, it's going to start rotting. So, uh, um, I wouldn't recommend the average homeowner start trying to replace a lot of rotting framing members or stuff like that. One of the tricks that people may have seen people, inspectors, to test if wood is rotting, such as a stud in a crawl space or something like that, is you can take a knife and kind of stab into it. And if it's soft, it's beyond repair basically at that point. It most likely needs replaced. But at some point, if the water, it is going to lead to rot in multiple areas of the home. Um, like I said, I'll repeat this for the third time. Uh, the products that we build the houses out of now, OSBs, sheetrocks, the back of sheetrock, absolutely love mold. So the more you can control moisture, whether it's a new home, old home, it really doesn't matter. It is the number one enemy of your home. Okay, so just kind of a basic tip on here. Um, Doors, windows, sidings. Everyone's going to have a different level of what they're comfortable with. The biggest thing I would say is there's several components around a home that will get loose. So even when we build a new home, new homes aren't last to stay perfect forever without homeowner maintenance. So the sooner you notice something that's loose, uh, tighten it. I mean, that's really the best piece of advice. Whether it's a window hinge, a cabinet handle. Cabinet hinges are famous ones. A lot of them are easily adjustable nowadays. And that's one, if you're not comfortable with it or haven't done something like that, that I would recommend. Like a YouTube video is fine, on some of the explanations on the smaller items. I'll go through the little list I have on here on what are harder and more easy homeowner friendly items. Uh, um, but there is a lot of stuff that homeowners can do on their own. And I can say, after being a builder in this town for 20 years, we do have a shortage of builders. So I can understand there could be frustration on finding a contractor to even come out to your house, especially for some of the smaller jobs. So in this day and age, a lot of people are going to have to DIY a lot of stuff. But again, while I don't recommend YouTube and all that all the time and Googling it, there are times where it's very appropriate and super helpful. Um, Another thing I will say, because SBS was generous enough to give me their office to do this class with you all today, I truly believe that some of the more local stores, and I'll name a few at the end, do have a lot more expertise to offer the average customer coming through the door that may have a small home repair that they need. So I personally know a lot of staff at places like Menards or Brown's Electric in town or Northland Wood. And while this whole class isn't about to endorse any one vendor over another, I can say some of those stores with more of a local touch typically may have a little more expertise to at least guide you in the right direction if you need any help. So there's definitely a value in that. Um, on doors and windows, the main thing that you're going to want to check out is just all the weather strips on them. So that's one of the main leakers we found with interior weatherization. If you're looking for ways to save on your energy bills, Fairbanks is famous for having weather strips either not fitting right originally, and there's several aftermarket products you can put on them. This is going to be more on the door side, but also everyone knows if they have a cat or a dog, they probably lost a weather strip at one point or another. So replacing those is kind of some easy low hanging fruit. Loose hardware. So especially on opening windows, on triple pane windows, they're really heavy. So everything really needs to stay tight on them all the time. And if you have some hardware, so we've had stuff, a screw in a window that habitually likes to wiggle out a little bit. So that might be a great place for a little bit of Loctite on there. Because you want to keep that stuff snug. 'Cause the over time, as it sags and has a little bit of play in it, it just gets worse and worse to the point that it's not going to be repairable anymore. Um, Caulking around doors, windows, trim around the house. That's typical homeowner maintenance that all homeowners can do. It's going to happen on a lot of houses where either that shrinks or due to weather, due to moisture, due to cleaning, comes apart sometimes. But the more you don't repair it, the more it's going to start chipping away at paint and causing other issues. So that's just a really easy one that anyone can kind of walk around their house on a Saturday morning with a tube of latex caulking and just keep all their trims in order. Because if you ever go to move out of the house or sell it, it's really nice to have just kept up with that little bit of homeowner maintenance. Paint on jams. So this is going to be on exterior doors. Not a lot of people up here have wood windows. Honestly, if you do have wood windows, they're either really, really expensive or they are the windows that I was talking about that might actually be the bad ones in Fairbanks, some single panes or something. Uh, Anyway, on that, that's just the one area that I see commonly deteriorate on doors. They take a lot of beating, and typically they need painted about every 5 years or so. So I see a lot of doors going to disrepair and just start looking really bad because people don't keep up on that. Siding and roofing, a lot of that's going to probably come down to hiring a subcontractor. Some repairs may be easy, but this is one of those things where professionals do the job for a reason, and it may not be safe to do such a roof repair, even though it may seem simple. Um, Construction is a dangerous job. So luckily, I've never had anything too terrible happen on a job site. But it is something every day when you're working on houses. So whether it's a electrical hazard, falling off a ladder hazard, falling from a roof, working on houses is a dangerous job. So when you're undertaking certain home maintenance activities, I think a lot of people can get complacent because they're at their home. They don't think of it as an occupation and all the hazards that may be around them. So on some of this stuff, it is really important to slow down and say, what are your capabilities? If it's a piece of loose siding down low, it may be something that you're able to take care of. But I know even like for vinyl siding, if it's not something you're good at, where you can take the pieces apart on the top and the bottom and slide a new piece in, it's not something that if you're just doing it for the first time, you'd want to learn to do the hardest part of the whole thing. So but I do recommend taking care of. So if you see loose shingles, roof metal panels, or siding, um, I'll see a lot of people let those go for years. And actually, I saw one. It was a house that I used to live in out on the Lawrence Road area, North Pole, and it had a piece of siding a few years after I moved out. It drove me crazy because I really wanted to go just take care of it, but it wasn't my house anymore. But they just had one piece that was slightly loose for about 3 years, and slowly. It would have been an easy fix at first, but it eventually ended up taking down a couple other pieces as it got through a couple windstorms. So uh, those are stuff that you might not be able to take care of them right away, but I suggest finding someone that can because they can lead to bigger and bigger problems. Um, if you can see any plywood whatsoever on your roof or your house, which is pretty darn common on houses in Fairbanks, Alaska, uh, it's not meant to be exposed. So you're going to want to get that taken care of right away. And anywhere where water can get in, if you notice water entering your siding, entering your roof, even if you don't know where it's going, I've seen a lot of people just say, well, I don't really know where it's going. It doesn't seem to be causing an issue. It may take 10 or 20 years to cause an issue if it's going down to a wood foundation, a wood supporting wall, anything like that, that may be hard to see. So it's good to inspect your house every now and then, especially in a rainstorm or again in the springtime when all the snow is coming off the roof, and just look at all the paths of water that are coming off of it. And make sure there isn't, like I said, going up underneath some shingles or behind a piece of siding, because that'll lead to some really big long-term damage. Um, and then on the outside, So we do get quite a bit of sun in the summertime. Again, born and raised here, so I know the dark part and I know the bright part in the summer. Bright part is pretty darn bright. So keep in if you have any wood finishes, a lot of houses, especially 2000s, 90s, 80s, T111 houses in the area are going to need painted. And the more often you do that paint and keep it from chipping, it'll protect the longevity of the frame. It'll make it easier when you go back to paint it again. So, and the bigger one I've seen too is cedar. So, cedar is not the easiest thing to maintain if anyone's thinking about putting it on their homes. It does look absolutely beautiful, but you're gonna have a pretty regular maintenance schedule of restaining it. Um, Fixtures, there's a lot of stuff on your plumbers or your toilets and your faucets around the house that are fairly easy to fix. Those are going to be the YouTube fixes that I'm going to suggest. So if you have a leaking wax ring or say a leaking angle stop under your sink, those are things that I'm not saying I would advise against calling a plumber, but the typical homeowner typically has most of the tools to do those things, especially the wax ring. The angle stop's a little bit trickier. Drain putty, that's the thing to watch for. So specifically around bathtub drains and showers, if you can see underneath them, and sinks, and this is a pretty easy repair too. A lot of times the plumber's putty that's used around those may dry up, become brittle a lot of times too. I know my mom is an absolute clean freak and likes to really clean right around the edge of that drain there. So she gets every little thing out of there, including the last little bit of plumber's putty. So that's typically an easy repair. Gurgling drains on plumbing. We'll talk about that here in a second too. That's going to typically be frozen roof vents, which is an easy fix. Um, some typical just minor maintenance on the mechanical side. I do suggest getting your boiler tuned fairly regularly, at least every year or two, depending on the model. There's several great resources to reach out on that, depending on what type of boiler you have. If you don't know a great plumbing contractor to reach out to, I'd recommend reaching out to one of the local plumbing companies, such as Frontier Supply, Ferguson Enterprises, Keller Supply. I'm sure they would have a lengthy list of mechanical contractors. Small leaks, you just really got to make sure you stay on top of those. I had a friend the other day that told me their shower has been like leaking forever, and it's the hot water side. So not only are they driving up, they actually have a water bill. So driving up water bill and heating costs, those really do add up and are typically fairly easy to repair. Your ventilation dampers. So we talked about making sure you have ventilation. So the easiest way is go turn all your bath fans and your dryer on and your range hood and go around your house and see which damper. So they should be little hoods all around your siding that have a damper on the inside, and you should be able to see that thing flapping when the fan's going. If not, you have one of two problems. Either your fan isn't working, or worse yet, it's not hooked up. So you're just blowing uncontrolled heat and moisture into your attic at the worst time in the winter time. So I really suggest that everyone be familiar with the dampers on their home, understand where they are, and check and make sure that what they're hooked to is actually pushing air. So, and then also dryer vents, same kind of thing. Make sure they're operating correctly uh, and cleaned regularly. Okay, so this is one that I almost didn't throw it in here, but about probably two-thirds of the community is on septics. We do have a lot of people within the municipalities that are on city utilities, but basically everything outside in the borough is going to be on septic. So I've seen a lot of people, especially people just moving to Alaska, that have had issues their first couple of winters with their septic systems. My mom worked for a septic company when I was growing up, so I became very accustomed to the smell being around pump trucks. That was every time I was sick, I got to enjoy that experience. It was great. Uh, but on the septic side, like I said, there's just a few things that you're going to want to watch out for. So DEC up here is going to recommend, I believe their current recommendation is 2 years for pumping it. Um, this is just going to remove the excess solids that are in there. So septics are going to work by the solids entering the tank. There's two sides of the tank. On the first side, you're going to have a lot of bacteria attacking the solids as they enter there. They don't like all solids. So greases, stuff like that are going to maintain and stay in the tank, um, unlike what's supposed to be in there. So every couple of years, it's good to get some of that extra stuff cleaned out of there. Snow and grass are great. So this is one area. I had a new client one time that because of the groundwater table, the septic had to be about as close as it could be to the surface and remain legal, which is 4 feet below the dirt line. If you just have dirt, you're allowed to substitute 2 inches of foam for 2 feet of dirt if you'd like. But anyway, you built a dog yard right over the top of the leach field. So all the snow is continually packed down all winter. And a lot of times, this may be fine. You may get through it. They had other issues where they had a very large system with very minimal use, so it wasn't getting a lot of warm water in it. But towards the end of their first winter there, the leach field actually did freeze up, mostly because of the dogs trampling down all the snow on it. So the next winter, kept the dogs off of it, no issues whatsoever. Um, Again, kind of anecdotal evidence because temperatures can be different, this and that. But the packing down the snow or removing snow certainly does not help it. Certain things that you don't want to put down the septic. I mentioned grease. There's a rule with DEC that if you have a commercial shop, you're not allowed to hook the drain up to the shop drain up to a regular septic. Uh, but it's kind of wild to me that honestly, what I've seen more cooking oil and grease go down kitchen sinks than I've seen people dump engine oil and stuff like that down shop drains. And while one's their different environmental impact for sure, they both absolutely destroy the systems. Uh, so any grease, keep any of that out. Garbage disposals. I have a lot of people that want them. If you use them very sparingly, I would say they're fine. But I've met a lot of people that just want to use them as a replacement for the trash can, and that's really terrible for your septic system. Harsh chemicals can also kill the bacteria in the tank, so you want to watch dumping a bunch of bleach or cleaner or stuff like that down there. It can disrupt and kill the bacteria that you need to do its thing to turn the solids into gray water and then distribute it out the septic. So in there in that picture, you can see a typical bed style leach field. So the black pipes coming up are going to be attached to the tank. One's just an inspection standpipe. Then the green pipes are going to be the perforated pipes that, as the water exits the tank, that's all going to be gray water that goes back down into the groundwater. Um, so standpipes tell a story. I got another slide coming up about standpipes. We'll talk about that. Backups. So an unfortunate part about owning a home is when the water backs up. And then my next great comment on there, a lot of people ask in the wintertime, they don't know the first time. Usually they learn after the first time, but why does my house smell like poo in the winter? Typically you have a frozen vent, plumbing vent. There's actually two causes, and I put them both there. A frozen roof vent. So the two fixes for that. Typically, most people just go up there with some warm water, which again, you have to be very safe. It's a dangerous time to be on the roof. But you can dump warm water down it to clear it. Another Fairbanks trick that a lot of people have done is you can get a piece of copper pipe and bend the end of it so it can hang off down into the vent pipe. This conducts some heat through the copper pipe to keep that cleared. So that's kind of an old Fairbanks trick of doing it. But the other one is a dry peat trap. So, like I mentioned, Fairbanks is extremely dry in the wintertime. Certain people don't use certain areas of their homes. HRV systems may not be pulling out a lot of moisture if you're living in a very dry home. So sometimes that peat trap can dry out. Several different ones throughout the house can, but typically if it's not a backed up vent on the roof and you smell that septic smell in the house, you have a dry pee trap somewhere in the home. And the one advice I would give for it, so I've had my garage drain ones in the summertime go out when there's not a lot of water going down them, and also my HRV ones have dried up before. When you're inspecting to find out which one it is, do a waft smell. Don't do a direct smell on any of the drains because when you find it, it's a little bit intense. So take baby steps on that. One tip on the well is find out where your heat tape is. If it's controlled by a breaker or a plug-in, make sure you know. Uh, Most people are honestly unaware of where their heat tape location is. Uh, so sometimes I used to do inspections for Golden Valley, the home sense energy audits, and we'd find people that leave them in all year. It just wasn't necessary. Even in the wintertime, a lot of them don't need plugged in all winter. I never want to give anyone a recommendation that would damage their water line. But a lot of modern water lines are PEX and can withstand the freeze pretty good. So I know in my current house, I've been in there for 8 years. I think it froze one year that I had to turn my heat tape on, and it's always, you always find out when you have shampoo in your hair. It's the greatest time to find out that your well line froze. But I would go flip the switch on, and within about 30 minutes, I had water again. And again, because it's a PEX line, wasn't a big, massive issue. Copper lines are more prone to breaking, but again, it's worth noting where they are because they do draw quite a bit of electricity depending on the heat tape itself, but it doesn't need to be plugged in all year long. So just a quick thing on standpipes, because I know this is a really fun thing when your sewer is backing up into the home. Uh, so I have a couple examples of the different types of standpipes that you'd see for a traditional leach field. So the first one with the green pipe on the left-hand side, uh, that one's going to be a leach field standpipe. So if you were to ever find water standing in that one, that means your leach field's not taking water. So it'd be in the corners. So like the middle picture there, there'd be typically one, at least catty corner to each other. Sometimes you'll have four in there. DEC requires two. Um, but the one next to it, where you can see the leach field piping, that's a clean out in case there was ever a clog for that drop connection there. And then the picture all the way to the right, so you see three standpipes there. So the two that are close together are going to be the tank. Um, and then the one closest to the house is going to be a really important one because DEC requires every house have a septic cleanout within 2 feet of the home. So that's going to be one. If your house is ever backing up and you're wondering, do I have a clog inside of the house? Do I have a failing leach field? Because that's kind of your first step to finding out what you should do. Um, you would pop the cap on that one closest to the house. And if you put a stick or a tape measure down there and there's water in there, you know that you're backed up from the leach field into the house. So you could also test that other one in the middle picture, that other black one, because that's on the leach field side of the tank. If that has water in it, similar to your leach field, you know that your leach field is failing and not taking any water. So that's a bad situation, or you're just frozen. But going back to the one under the uh, little kind of rectangle window there, the closest one to the house. If you were to look down in that one and your house was had sewage backing up in the garage or a bathtub, and there is no water inside that, you're actually in luck because that means you have a clog somewhere in your house. Which is good to know because at least you know your septic's fine at that point. You have a clog to find somewhere in your house, but using that series of pipes that are out in everyone's yards, you can see, is it a septic problem or do you have a clog under the house in the crawl space, wherever it may be. It'll help you direct the septic company on what they need to do when they get out there. Quick note on soils and frost settlement. Um, so again, mentioned in the Fairbanks area, we do have a lot of permafrost. So different soils definitely handle that a lot different. The roughest area in Fairbanks, from my experience, well, there's a few, but the downhill side of Farmers Loop is famous for its poor soils. An abundance of permafrost. Bradway, Nordale Road have some pretty bad spots. There's a lot of it pretty widespread throughout Fairbanks. The one thing that is good is a lot of our low-lying areas also have a lot of really good gravels and materials like that that are typically really good to build on. Um, if you have frost settlement issues, this is probably going to be a thing that you're going to need to call in a professional contractor for. There are different levels of settlement. As I mentioned, almost all new homes experience some settlement in their first year or two. And that's going to be typical. And that's what I mean when I say some of it can be minor. That stuff's usually going to be a caulking repair, a little bit of touch up paint, maybe a sheetrock crack, something like that. But it shouldn't be reoccurring and extensive. If you're concerned, I suggest you call an engineer. Um, so there's different options for different types of foundations, whether you're on pad and post, traditional foundation or a slab. It's going to be a really tricky one. Sheetrock cracks are typical, but if they continue to grow, it can be signs of something more. And I'm looking at the time. I want to get you guys to a couple more slides, so I'm going to kind of boogie through these next couple. But the big thing, like I talked about with my parents' foundation, is get the water away from the foundation. So this one I'm going to breeze through real quick for you guys. Oops, didn't mean to go that quick. That was really quick. Okay. So on this one, some of the easy to do stuff, obviously the caulking and painting around the house, just tighten stuff. If you ever notice anything loose, take the time to get out a screwdriver and take care of it. There's a lot of easy air sealing measures that can be done in attics and crawl spaces that homeowners can take on. Grade work, just making sure the dirt around your home isn't sloping towards your home anywhere. The moisture reduction and stuff you can do on your own by ensuring your ventilation is working. A lot of drywall and tile repairs can be tedious, but with enough DIY instruction, people can usually get through it. If you're looking at weatherization issues, thermal cameras are becoming pretty inexpensive. And I try not to just send everyone else just all loosey goosey with that because you got to understand what you're looking at a little bit. But they do offer a lot of insight to some hard to see problems. Things you're probably going to want to get some help on, siding and roofing repairs. So moisture reduction, even though I know I said you could do that yourself just a second ago, but if you're adding bath fans or you need recommendations on the best course for ventilation, I would recommend getting a professional. A lot of the mechanical and electrical stuff, probably going to want to hire a professional. Home settling. It's good to get energy raters involved if you're concerned about energy issues. And know your worth. Sometimes I know, like myself, hanging sheetrock, my sheetrocker is 10 times faster than me. So it's not going to pay me to go try that. It's best for me to have someone else do that. So some things you're better at doing other stuff and other people are better at doing other things. So it's worth just having some experts come in sometimes. And Google and YouTube lightly. So while they are a great tool, they can also be misleading sometimes, especially when it comes to Alaska issues because we are so unique. So anyway, they are great resources, but I just say tread lightly on that. And it always helps to ask a local professional. Just real quick on energy losses, some of the biggest ones I see. Air leaks, we talked about that. That's a whole nother class. Dirty boilers, try to keep those maintained. Go into your attics and your crawl spaces, check them out. Like I said, a lot of people don't, and that's the insight too. A lot of your home maintenance issues and concerns typically show there first. The thing I don't have time to go over is the energy rating program, ACWARM, which is available for free through Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, but it's what all the energy raters use to rate houses. If you're interested in that, I recommend reaching out to the next person on there, CCHRC. I know they have a lot of information on those programs, but I used to do a lot of ACWARMs, and it's kind of fun to do the energy modeling. And it's not very hard. It's actually something that most people can figure out fairly quickly. Just a couple things on electrical real quick. Anything in your home that's using electricity to make heat is driving your electric bill, if anyone had any questions on that. So typically the light bulbs aren't an issue anymore. Most people don't have incandescent light bulbs. Phantom power, when I used to do a lot of audits, didn't tend to be an issue. But a couple things you can do is track your meter. So everyone has a meter on their house. And if you're wondering if you have fluctuating days, it's good to do a log of 30 days and see what your usage is day to day to see what habits might have changed that. But like I said, typically the driver for everything I see is something that makes heat. Okay, so since we're getting down there, a couple tips and thoughts, and then I want to give you guys just a couple resources. You guys will have access to this slideshow. But get rid of water ASAP. I can't emphasize that enough. Little problems will always turn into big problems if you leave them unattended. Energy issue repairs, so the air sealing, stuff like that, ventilation, oftentimes pay for themselves, so they're really worth doing. It's always a good idea to make sure you're actively on monitoring CO, radon, especially in the hills and smoke. Make sure you have all that equipment maintained at all times. And a lot of people don't have a fire extinguisher in their house. It's cheap insurance. They got them for sale at any hardware store. So it's good to have a couple around your house and let other occupants know where they're at. Again, go in your crawl spaces and attics. They're going to give you early warning signs of any major issues typically. And your home's the biggest investment you're ever going to make. So it's really worth taking care of them. I've seen different levels of maintenance, and it can be something that only gets higher in value. And I've seen people destroy their home. So it takes just a lot of regular maintenance to maintain the investment, but it is going to be the biggest thing that you ever invest in. So it's kind of worth it. A couple resources I want to share with you as we finish up here. Um, we have CCHRC, so who we did this in cooperation with. They've done a ton of research or researching that papers. They have a great YouTube library from Ilya down there, talking about a lot of different home issues, probably stuff that we actually covered in here too. Uh, Local vendors, like I said, they're a great source for some expertise, whether it be someone like SBS, Brown's Electric, Seamless Supply, Rivers Wood Products, Northland Woods. These are just some that I know that have great professionals that can help homeowners. We got to shout out the Interior Alaska Builders Association. So we have that in our home directory, which is a great resource if you're ever looking for contractors or just information on building. If you need tools, the China Tool Library is a local free tool library that provides homeowners with a whole plethora of tools. If you have questions on out-of-state things, I always recommend reaching out to your local home building association. And a lot of times, if you speak to your lender at a bank, if you're wondering about a major remodel or something like that, your lender can have a lot of insight for you. And with that, that is it. I thank you guys, and I think I got you out right about one.
Yeah, thank
Let's
you so
see if
much,
there was.
Brannon. This is great. We do want to leave a little bit of time for some questions. So if people are willing to stay on a little bit past one, feel free to put any of your questions in the chat, and we will sort of have a little bit of a Q&A. We had one that came up as you were speaking, and the person said, I assumed my house built in 2004 had a house wrap, but it does not. The cellulose insulation is held back by the siding. Is the lack of a house wrap a problem in Fairbanks?
Okay, so that's a fun one. So because we don't, I've heard this debated both ways. It is in recent codes that you are supposed to have a house wrap. This is one of those fun Fairbanks things. It used to not be enforced. It was argued that any moisture getting into the wall was being to some degree held in by the home wrap. So I've heard of retrofit ciders going back and finding a lot of frost on the backside of Tyvek. And some people would argue, well, you put it on backwards or this or that. So traditionally back then, it was actually pretty common not to. If everything else was done correctly, the siding alone shouldn't be holding back the insulation. There should be a regular sheathing or something like that at least. So it's really unique, and this is one of those things too that's really hard for me to give great advice on because every housing situation is so dynamic. Um, but yeah, it's much more common now. Pretty much every house is going to have house wrap. In 2004, it may have been in code then. Like I said, I know even the city of North Pole and Fairbanks weren't enforcing it at that point. While now it's pretty heavily enforced.
Anybody has any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Let's see if we have any. Early on, somebody asked if you could explain again why the packed snow on top of the leach field is a problem for the septic system.
Uh, the loose snow just acts as an insulator. So it acts as a blanket over the top of it. So when you push it down, it'll drive the frost deeper into the snow. So it happens when we're digging holes and stuff too in the spring. If we have packed down snow over an area, it's going to stay frozen longer. It's going to push that frost line down. Where if we leave that fresh blanket of snow or even vegetation layer of grass and moss, really helps to hold that heat in from the septic system.
Great. We got another question that says, I have a loose vent pipe in my roof. All other pipes are not loose. Is it a problem?
So that's going to be a specific one. I see that. I mean, it's not ideal. if it's not attached right, especially down underneath, it could be venting moisture into the attic, which is going to cause the hoarfrost and spring rain situation. So also, if it's loose, the boot on the roof probably isn't tight, so it could be allowing moisture coming in. So yeah, that should be pretty secure.
Yeah, and then we got another one that said, I've been wanting to build a house with a geothermal heat pump, but if that isn't an option, is there a heating or venting system that you would recommend?
So the geothermal one's tough. I've done one house with that. It was with a company out of Anchorage, and I'm trying to remember the name. Chuck Renfrew is the owner, and he was an older gentleman that I believe doesn't do a whole bunch of them anymore. We don't have any local companies, I believe, that do them. It's definitely not my area of expertise. I typically just do traditional boiler heating systems. So that may be a good question for like Ilya at Cold Climate,
Hmm.
if they want to reach out to him, or possibly even some of the folks at NRail might be a great resource if they're really interested in that. Would probably have better information than me on that.
Yeah. All right. Well, it seems like we don't have any other questions. Oh, we just got one. Okay, one more. The drywall guy cut the vapor barrier behind the drywall while replacing parts of it. He said that the vapor barrier is fine with the cuts. Was he supposed to fix the vapor barrier that he cut?
So ideally, if it's easily accessible, yes, you should fix it. Does every vapor barrier have holes in it? Yes. Does that mean you should purposely go around punching more holes in it? No. It's just going to be an area for uncontrolled air leakage. Not ideal. It's nice if they could reach in there at least with some vapor barrier tape is typically the easier fix. Um, is it worth chasing every little staple hole and stuff like that? Typically not. But if there's an easily accessible thing, you should definitely try to repair it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, we unfortunately don't have any more time for questions, but feel free to reach out to us or to Brannon with any more of your questions. And thank you to AHFC and GBA for sponsoring today's class. If you enjoyed this class, we have one more that's next Tuesday, the May 13th, and it is energy efficiency upgrades that pay off. You can find the recordings of all of our classes online on our YouTube channel. You're usually posted the day after. If you want to learn more, you can join our newsletter or visit our website at cchrc.org. Thank you so much for attending today's class and presentation, and have a lovely rest of your day, everybody.